if you don't find yourself improving on a daily basis, it's not looking good, right? When we think of a person moving in a straight line, right? Very rarely does it exist that we have a person moving in a completely straight line, where they're not necessarily moving in a positive direction, but they're not necessarily moving in a negative direction either, right? And, the reality is, if you don't have someone that's constantly improving on a day to day basis, they're usually focused on getting worse on a day to day basis. That's usually how it is. Either someone's improving or they're on a decline. And sometimes the decline or the improvement isn't that steep, and sometimes it's going very, very slowly. But regardless, many times in society, we have someone moving on an incline, whether it's somewhere to a positive note or a negative note. We have someone moving towards an incline at all times. So if we don't find ourselves improving, it's not looking good. And I promise you, if you don't find yourself improving on a day to day basis, I promise you there's some things you might be doing that could possibly lead you to possibly getting worse or, devolving in a sense. We could say that, right? So in general, it's not looking good if we can't think of ways that we're possibly improving on a day to day basis, right? Now, when I mention the word self-improvement, a lot of guys interpret this as, let me improve my physique. Let me take these supplements. Let me make sure I got the six pack. Let me make sure I start working out. I mean, this is cool and all. The physical is extremely important, but the physical is also formed by the spiritual, right? There is such a thing as a vibe. You can even think about yourself when you go on YouTube or when you choose to listen to music. Do you choose to listen to people on YouTube that literally spread negativity, that do really controversial things, that literally start fights with people? Do you tend to watch content like that? I don't really tend to watch content like that. And even when I do, it's just like, okay, this guy's like crazy. And I'm not even thinking about liking the guy or following the guy. I'm just like, okay, this is just so weird. And I actually feel like staying away from the guy almost. And you want to keep in mind that both men and women have reactions like this when we discuss the idea of possibly improving myself, right? I know that when I go on YouTube and I see a guy who's super obsessive with how he looks, up to the point where he's willing to take things that are not so safe in order to achieve this dream version of himself, or when he's doing things that are not that healthy mentally, right? That might get him views. I know for sure I like to stay away from people like that, right? I even like to watch some YouTubers that some people think are boring sometimes. It's not necessarily, because they're boring. It's probably because sometimes they make me feel better about myself. Sometimes they have the right thing I needed to hear that day. Sometimes I've grown comfortable with them. Sometimes I'm approaching it in such a way where sometimes I even feel like giving them money. Even if they were boring or not the most fun person, they provide that little note of positivity in my life where I'm like, I feel better with this person. I want to associate with this person. And that is not necessarily have anything to do with having a six pack, developing a perfect physique, or developing a perfect face. That person has developed what we call positive energy, right? It's more of a mental thing. It's more of a spiritual thing. And you got to realize when you're focused on the word self-improvement and improving yourself from a physical standpoint, there is a whole nother side to this, and that is the mental and spiritual standpoint, right? And I get it. A lot of people are rooted in the physical reality where they want to develop their body and face a certain way. But you must realize that the spiritual reality takes precedence over the physical reality. That means what exists in the spiritual forms the physical, right? What we think in our minds, right, forms our words, forms our actions, form the direction of our life, right? So we can confidently say that everything in the spiritual, everything in the mental takes precedence over what exists in the physical, right? Even if you focus on something like working out, that exists in the mental. You think of it before you start doing it. And you're going to realize, and I would encourage you if you think that having a face and a body is everything, it's important for sure. You should focus on improving your face and body for sure. But if you think that's everything, you should go ahead and look up guys on YouTube that only focus on that. Guys that are obsessive with working out, and they've made their whole channel doing it. I promise you, there's going to be some guys that you look at that have that obsession with it, where they don't have a good vibe. Sometimes they look like they might be kind of sad, possibly down on themselves. They look like they might be sometimes isolated, right? And that's not to pick on them for anything, right? Because every person has their vices, every person has their demons that they're fighting. But it's to say, when we talk about the idea of self-improvement, we talk about improving yourself physically, physique, face, skincare, for sure, to a reasonable extent. But more importantly, we talk about developing ourselves mentally and spiritually. That means having a positive mindset. That means thinking the right things. That means doing the right things, right? That means being a decent person, being a good person through and through, even when no one's looking, even when you have maybe nothing to gain from it. That's what we mean when we discuss development in terms of evolving the soul.